Good evening, and you are joining with Spotlight on Channel I. It is common knowledge that everywhere in the world, globally I would say, that most of the educational institutes were forced to embrace or rather switch to online education because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is because of the COVID-19 pandemic that has been affecting every other aspect of human life. And this school closure just in South Asia has affected the learning of 439 million students just in this region only, and this includes 4.2 million students in Sri Lanka as well. This number includes all of us, so which means every one of us, not just the students, but the parents and every other stakeholder of the education system is affected by it. Now, the Sri Lankan government is trying to manipulate this situation of the COVID virus and trying to restart or resume the schools right away within 2 or 3 weeks. It was announced recently, but we have questions. We understand when is it going to happen and how is it going to happen, and if there is a strategy behind it, and who will be prioritized for this process. To discuss all this, because we understand it matters to you, we thought of shining the spotlight on today's Spotlight program on this matter. To speak about this, we have invited the Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Professor Kapila Pera, for today's Spotlight program. Professor, good evening to you and great to have on board. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening to you. So as a discussion point, so I would just open up the conversation about the school commencement. Now, His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa has sort of made this directive to commence these schools within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Is that possible? And if that is possible, what is the strategy? How is the status of it?
Yeah, Ministry of Education is delighted with this announcement by His Excellency President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Not only the Ministry of Education, I am sure all the children you mentioned, 4.2 million, yes, true, and equally the parents and entire society is this is a very, very good news.
Exactly.
Pleasing news, because the disruptions, as you mentioned, 434 million in the South Asia,
yes,
and 69% of the primary, the parents of the primary school students had mentioned, according to a UNICEF report, that 69% of them say that their children have less or lot less. Educated. And then you mentioned about the online and blended learning, but the same report, the UNICEF report, says that in the private and the international schools, the contact Monday to Friday by the teacher and the student was about 52%, whereas in the school system in the state sector, this has dropped to, the status is 8%. 8%. So this report is published on 9th September 2021. So this justifies the good news by His Excellency the President. And then with the announcement of this one, UNICEF local writes to us and the Health Ministry, and they are delighted.
So they have been communicating with
yes, they are delighted to hear, and they say that they are very happy to partner with Sri Lankan education system and the Ministry of Health, and they provide key factors, and they say you consider the situation in context. So here there is not only us, they say that number one, the move by the government to reopen the schools for physical learning, physical learning is welcomed and needs to progress swiftly. The reopening of schools should be, however, be based on solid guidelines that cater to for the needs of the various contexts across the island. And goes on to say, safe reopening of schools must prioritize, the youngest and the poorest, who are the worst affected with school closures.
That's right.
The vaccination of teachers or students should not be a prerequisite for schools to reopen.
It's not a prerequisite.
That's what they say.
Says. Right.
That's
so
what
what is our approach in that case then?
Well, you all know that His Excellency President few months ago, and prior to that, the Honorable Prime Minister invited then the Ministry of the Minister of Education, myself, and the Pediatric Society of Sri Lanka, with the pediatricians, the likes of Professor Lama Badusuriya and veterans of pediatricians. He summoned, and they took the key decision. We will include vaccination of all the teachers, principals, non-academics, and education administrators of this country, and requested the figures. That time the figure was 279,000 of these groups, out of which 242,000 were teachers, are teachers. And with immediate effect, the Pediatric Society led by Professor Sharman and Professor Suranta Pereira, together with the Government Medical Officers Association Chairperson, President Dr. Anuruddha Padiniya, and Honorable Minister, took this with Director General of Health Services, the Honorable Minister of Health, and the Secretary to the Ministry of Health, and the officials, and they were very, very positive. And it says swiftly, I must say swiftly, they took this message to ex-President President and facilitated the vaccination of these teachers and all this. Now we have completed the vaccination of both doses, I must say. The last was 12th of September. We have completed.
For the teachers? For
the teachers, non-academics, principals. So that was a separate one. So we have vaccinated. And although the prerequisite for the students is not the UNICEF says, actually there are two things, right? So the reports, the scientists and the specialists say this one, but this report says, however, it must be in the context. That is the perception by the society. So therefore, I think behind this thing, I believe there is a talk that the vaccination of school children above the age of, different ages, age 12 to 15 and 15 to 19 or 15 to 20 is considered. I see the vaccination is the Pfizer vaccine. That kind of decision I heard over the media, and I participated at this technical committee appointed by the HE, the President, with the announcement. He wanted the recommendations of which schools to be started and all this. And Ministry of Education has ever been ready with our plans, and we have had experience in 2020, 2021, 2020 we had in May, then in November 23rd, 2021 in January 10th, then March 29th, then conducting of A-levels and the grade 5 scholarships in 2020, October the 10th, and from October 11th to November 6th, and then conducting of O-levels in the entire country, 622,000 students right around the country with all this pandemic from March 1st to March 10th, and then again restarting entire school system on March 29th, and then again after the New Year, April the 19th, up until the closure in 23rd of April. So all these stages, we have all these guidelines, plans that we practice, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education.
So this booklet will be given to the schools as well as
this guidelines. Has already been given in March. This was issued in, this is the guidelines. So this was done by Ministry of Education, UNICEF, and the Health Ministry, and Health Director General has this became that is his guideline. This was issued in 2020 May 11th. Everything is there. Preparing the mask, everything is there.
It will be wonderful to have a digital copy somewhere on the ministry's website.
It's there. It's there.
Great. So that means anyone who wants to take a look at it and go and take a look at the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education's website and see the copy for yourself, because another point would be the parents. They will be extremely concerned about sending their child to the school because they don't know the plan behind, the strategy behind the ministries, both the ministries, Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. So when it comes to commencement, Professor, of these schools, which schools are going to open first, and for whom is it going to open?
Yeah, in the entire country we have 3,884 schools right around the country in different geographical locations where the the grade 1 to 5 schools. And based on the student population, we have 1,349 schools where the student number is varying from 1 child to 50 children.
1 to 50, okay.
So there are 2 schools in Uva province, close to Bambarakanda, you would see, with 1 child.
With only one
child. Two teachers, 1 child. Likewise, we have entire map of on the GIS, all the school details, 1,439. And less than 200 less than 100 students, from 1 to 100, we have nearly 3,000.
Right.
And we have less than 200 number is 5,131. That is 50% of the schools.
Okay.
Less than 500 is almost 76%. That is 7,800 schools.
Right.
And then less than 1,000 is almost 90% of the schools. That is 9,500 odd schools. Total is 10,155. So, if the school opening can be done, we can decide. The talk is right now. The technical committee is of the view that we can start these 2 schools where the vaccination of students is not compulsory. I said no, although the UNICEF and the technical report says the vaccination of children is not necessary mandatory, not mandatory, but I saw this morning the Vietnam or the Cambodia, they are going to vaccinate children, school going children age 6, but in Sri Lanka I don't think it's going to come right now. So therefore ages between 6 and 11, so they are primary classes and the preschools.
Right.
So it's I would say if you take the numbers, we can safely go with less than 200 with the guidelines.
Right. So which means it is not mandatory. So if a parent does not want to vaccinate their child, even though you're giving it to the students, can they choose that?
Actually, according to the College of Pediatrician and the government health authorities, it is mandatory the parent consent, not only for the COVID vaccine. Remember, when we were children, when we are still, it is the vaccine, measles, mumps, all these things. We have these 3. No, so it's with the parents' consent is required.
Okay. So which means it depends on the parents' reasoning and understanding about the vaccine. So about the delivery of this education after the reopening, can a student still choose not to go to school? Will that affect their attendance and participation in education examinations after that, especially those who are in the A-level and O-level grades?
Yeah, actually the A-level and O-level grades, if the vaccination is not mandatory, the government doesn't decide.
Exactly.
So we can start the schools, right? But under strict health guidelines. So we have prepared guidelines. First few days, first week or so, the attendance were like 30% and so that. Then it came to 70%, 80%, and in the northern province 97%.
Right.
Fear of unknown is there. And therefore, it's a careful plan. So we will not invite all the students to the schools, every day. So the guidelines that we follow is that previously in all these guidelines we have decided, and even now we have the plan for this one.
Right.
Very, very clearly.
Okay. So
this is in Sinhala, but we have in all 3 languages. So this is what we presented to HE, the president. So we have this the plan that we invite students, and then we have further elaborated in this one. So by first by phase, how do we start school? Call children to the school. So if the number is 20 in a class, you can invite them Monday to Friday every day, where
Right.
you social distance is the guidelines, health guidelines. So
Okay.
then if the number is more than 20, less than 40, so you can divide into 2 and have alternate days, so alternate weeks.
Weeks. Mhm.
And then you ask if those who do not wish to come on board. So we are trying to do the same lecture. We go from blended mode,
Blended, hybrid mode.
hybrid mode. So we are the same thing right now. The state ministry for open and distance and education reforms. So we have e-Taksalava already.
Yes.
e-Taksalava 65,000 programs. This same ChannelEye and Netra, 16 hours a day, Monday through Friday, in Sinhala and in Tamil. So that is ChannelEye and Netra. Is telecasting Guru Gedara programs.
Exactly.
Guru Gedara content is little less. That's about 6,500. So we are now complete. That ministry is completing. Earlier it was grade 3 upwards. Right now it's, I think they have come down to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, everything. That is Guru Gedara program, TV channels. Then recently launched is what is called the Nanasa. So there the reach is limited, one can say, but that is satellite. So we are going to, we have had discussions with Sri Lanka Telecom, Pure TV, where the customer base is 500,000 right around the country. But that is those who have the Pure TV line, and other one is Dialog, this thing. But that is OTT and IPTV. If you have any mobile device by any service provider, of course you have talk about the connectivity is very low in Sri Lanka. But this 1.6 million and 500,000 couple is nearly 2 million, right? So this we have 4.2 million households. You can reach entire population, hopefully. But we are still in negotiation with the digital infrastructure facilitation by Honorable Namal Rajapaksa. How do we get the Pure TV and all these things through satellite, where 93% of this country, according to my survey, that is 4.9 million households out of 5.3 million households. Every single household of 4.9 has one television or multiple television sets. So if you ask why both Pure TV and Dialog, Pure TV, of course, if many children are in the same household with multiple grades where one channel is there, so you can rewind them.
Right. So you have basically it's you have multiple ways of learning. Even though you miss school, it won't directly affect you, but it might.
Yeah.
But somehow you can mitigate it.
It might.
Yeah. So you can mitigate it by tuning into different modalities of communication.
Yeah. So we try. The government is trying every effort. I'm personally involved in this, and I'm very, very, concerned about this.
We understand because it's not a quick process. Even though it has to be swift, we have to gradually implement it. It's not something
we
you
learn
can do overnight. Exactly.
We learn.
So the damage has to be reversed as well. Right. So now this coronavirus is not the only factor, especially these days, that's governing this reopening of schools. We also are very well aware about the teachers' strike that's going on. So what's your thought on that, and how do you think it's going to impact?
Actually, these teachers' principles are very good, I must say. Right? For example, if you take the latest statistics of submitting the GC A-level applications by the principals and grade 5 scholarships. Today, as of today, I am very, very happy to say 92% of the principals have submitted. 92% of the schools have submitted. That is 2,977 schools, and in some of the lowest percentage is number of principals is 83 in the southern.
Right.
You take central, north central, then Northwestern is upper 96, 93 and so. The Northern Province 100%. So we are yet to get 286 schools, and we have gotten the number of applicants are 255,697. But this figure is very difficult for me to say that because we have not only the school candidates, we have private candidates also.
Yes.
So according to my information, the students who are sitting for A level in the school system grade 13, we had 202,923. But I don't want to say that they all have signed, because I have about 8% of the school principals are yet to turn in. When you take the grade 5 scholarship, we have 80%, that is 7,275 school principals have turned in. That number is 280,979 children have applied through this 80% of the schools. And then this figure is good, because those who are in grade 5 now is 325,228. So we are only to get 44,249.
So this means the school principals are in support of this act.
Yeah, because the Ministry of Education and the Secretary of Education and the Minister and the government has not interfered in any way of their the struggle for raising of salaries. Instead, the Cabinet of Ministers swiftly move into this one, and this was a 24 or 26 year struggle.
That's right, yeah.
Since 1994, the October 6th. And
That's
then court into 2008, 1996 was, nobody has even take this far. Committees are appointed, no cabinet approvals for the salary proposals. But this time, I know His Excellency the President's directive in April, how much the Secretary to the President and the Prime Minister and the government pressurized the Salaries and Cadre Commission to come up with the proposal, and the Ministry of Education. And in April, even during 12th, 11th, 9th, 16th of April, you know what these days are, New Year.
Yes.
His Excellency the President's Secretary, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara, called Salaries and Cadre Commission, Public Service Commission, then the Ministry of Education, and then came up with the proposal that is going to cost 8.92 billion. Right now the price tag is 119 billion for the teachers and the principals. Right? And then that was not going to go to the cabinet, because the unions asked instead this 70 billion, what is called the Ministry of Education committee proposal, which was not forthcoming. Then they appointed a cabinet subcommittee, and the 2018 proposal, which is amounting to 33 billion, is the government commitment without any restriction, because Salaries and Cadre Commission approval was 8.92 billion, which is ranging from 8.15% to 19%. The salary increases 2,664 A-level qualified and 8,900 odd for the grade 1 principal. Whereas the other one is high, which was not even approved by the cabinet then in 2018, Salaries and Cadre not approved, that was approved by the cabinet. And so that will be given as the salary increase proposal to resolve this one in November. Till then, 5,000 rupees each for those who get engaged in children's education and related work. So I am sure these numbers reflect that goodwill. The reciprocation for the goodwill is good, but of course, you know, even when we were going for school and universities, there were two factions to the mind. That's okay, but we are hopeful, we are pleading. The Commissioner General of Exam even today has pleaded. I plead now, I plead every time, please do this one. So that means they are cooperative. So it's that we have not been able to physically open, keep the schools open for them, those who want to come to work, and we have not been able to. So we will do.
All right. So that's great news, because at the end, as a government, as a country, I think we all have to safeguard the development of our second or the next generation, because if we don't make them healthy, and if we don't make them educated, or at the same time, the country's future might be not that well for those who are living at the moment and those who will be living in the future as well at the same time. So on that note, since we have reached the end of today's discussion, Professor Kapil Perera, thank you very much. We thank you once again for coming on board and being a part of this and giving us great insight about what's in store when it comes to the recommencement or resumption of schools in the future. Hopefully within the next month we might see some good news, and that is thankful to the Ministry of Health and also to the Ministry of Education at the same time. So we will see you next week with a similar insightful discussion on Spotlight. Good night.